Hey everybody, it's your girl Rema the Great coming back at you with another Indie Rollout exclusive. I am your girl Rema the Great, and I am sitting here today with one of New York's finest. Right, I can say that. I know that goes for like what police officers and stuff, but don't worry. This is one of New York's finest. President Viz, president. Look, I'm just throwing it out there. Let's throw it out there, right? God has put it to my tongue, to his ears. But Principal Viz is in the building with us today, and we're gonna talk a little bit about, making some changes around here and how it starts with the educational system. So I just want to pass the mic to you and be like, thank you so much. One, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for coming out today and giving us some of your time here on the Indie Rollout. But specifically, this is really dope. You're a principal, at a real school, right? So,
Well, I'm glad to be here. You know, it's being a principal, being an educator is my passion. And definitely working with the youth is what I do. And just pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. What grades do you oversee?
So we're a high school with 9 through 12, and we're an unscreened school, which basically means we take all students regardless of their levels, regardless of the situation. That's really the mission of the Urban Assembly, who I represent. And Urban Assembly, we're 25 schools in the entire city, and we're themed.
Right.
So, like I said, we welcome all students.
Is it tough being a principal this day and age?
I think, yeah. I mean, the easy answer would be to say yes, right?
Right.
I think it's rewarding and it's tough at the same time. I think we learned a lot about post-pandemic and the conditions of adults and students. Because as a principal, you're in charge really of adults and students.
Absolutely.
Right? With that, the building, what happens in the community, all those things, the pressure of it, you go home with that kind of stuff too. You think about it, you're on vacation with it. Your mind never turns off because at the end of the day, you have lives. It's not like a car in a factory where you do one part and you switch it to somebody else.
Correct.
It's a continuing thing. So I would say it is tough, but I wouldn't describe it as tough. It's also really rewarding because you get to just live and breathe with just awesome young kings and queens and adults that really want to do this work.
Right. So what is a typical day in the life of a principal?
So I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm kind of crazy. My staff thinks I'm crazy, but
why? Because you wake up at 4 in the morning,
right?
Do people not understand that's how you steal time?
Listen,
it's the best hours, 4 to 6, because you're not expecting anybody to call you. You're not expecting to answer no emails, no nothing. You could just absolutely have me time. That's the investment there.
Yeah, and you get clarity, you get creativity, you get tranquility. So this is when, you hear the birds in the backyard and you can just think for a little bit, right?
Right.
I'm Dominican, so I make my little bustelo.
Say that.
You know what I mean?
Say that.
And I just drink my coffee and I start really processing the day, getting myself right? Doing my to-do list, planning my emails, planning my day. Understanding that I do plan my day, but it won't go as planned all the time. That's the life of a principal.
Correct.
And really, from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep, you're on. Anything can happen. I've had situations where students got lost. Unfortunately, I had situations where students, were in trouble with the law or something happened. So, from the minute you get into the building, you're really thinking about the outcome of your day, the outcome of the student's day, and the outcome of the adults in the building's day.
Right.
So it's very involved, very busy. Yeah.
Hey, what's going on? All right, chicka. Right? From your seat, where do you see education going? Is it going the right or wrong? Or is it going right or wrong, or is it stabilizing?
Well, I think in order to think about that, we have to think about our own education, right? So let me ask you. Let's talk a little bit about your education.
Oh, man, you want to talk to me about her education?
Because I think in order to understand where education is going, we have to understand where our own education.
Correct.
Right? So I want to know about your education and how did you come to this point?
So for me, we moved around a lot in my earlier years. By the grace, I didn't get left back at all from like kindergarten all the way up to high school. High school started, hormones start jumping, and you're able to be free to just go travel to school. So so everything was in the Bronx for me. So I lived in the Bronx. I lived in Throgs
The X
Neck.
in the house.
Right.
All right, let's go.
Look at you with the X, right? I lived in the Bronx, and we lived in Throgs Neck on one side of the Bronx, and I went to school at Jane Addams on the other side of the Bronx. So between Throgs Neck and Jane Addams, it has to be like an hour of traveling. So of course you're gonna have mayhem, meet all kind of different kids. I was always meeting new friends on the bus every school year. School was really interesting for me. But as far as like really getting the education that I wanted to have, right? So let's say that I can say there's specific teachers that stood out for me during my high school years, more so than anything else. And I actually did an extra year. So I had my daughter while I was in my senior year. Well, one of the many times I got left back. I was in like 10th grade 3 years straight. But I was only doing that for one class because I ain't like that class. I ain't go, never. So they always kept leaving me back, but whatever, right? So I did dropped the major. So my major was cosmetology at the time. So I dropped the major and I went to the YABC program, the Young Adult Borough Center, and I was able to graduate just with my credits. And I didn't have that many credits. I think I had like 20 something credits left to get after the major was dropped. So I did that over a course of 1 year, and I was able to graduate, walk with my class and everything. And then moving out of that space, naturally I was a reader, so I stayed well read. So I loved like a lot of novels and things like that. I was more into like urban, just like everybody else, right? Coldest winter ever, everything until like about 2000
Just a soldier.
Yeah, until like 2005, and I came across a book called Being Happy by either Matthew Andrews or Andrew Matthews. I can't tell you which one is the name, but I knew I fell in love with this book when I opened it and it had cartoons in it. But it actually taught me about my life, the things that was happening, and I never had anything that mirrored that to me. So that's like self-help kind of, right? And I haven't read another novel since. And I've been just staying on this like self-help kick, empowering myself and getting poured into, things of that nature. So my education went from regular traditional to progressive.
Right.
And then I didn't acknowledge none of this that I'm telling you now until many years later when I understood the difference between traditional education and progressive education. And now I welcome the progressive side because that's how it got me where I am today. But that traditional, baby. So I went back to school about maybe 15 years later. Not that many years later, but some years later. I went back to school in 2014 to get my BA in psychology. And when I started that, I was like, you know what? I wanted to just go to school so I could learn the proper terminology, how to say things. I wanted to be able to get in the room, so I felt that I had to go get this education so I could sit in the room. Little did I know that lived experience would get me into that room. So that's why I am today. So progressive education is my route. Like, I love it.
Right. So think about all the things that you had to go through to get there, right? Imagine if you would have had those supports earlier on.
Correct.
Figured out that, you know what, you do want to go into that area, right?
Correct.
But you had to go through all these things. So I think what's happening with education is that we're not finding out what our kids' talents are till later on.
Right.
I think the other thing that's happening with education is that it's very linear. At one point, you know, when I was going to school, you had to go to college. You had to go to college. You had to go to college. That idea of graduating and going to college, where does that come from? Because as people of color, our destinations have never been linear. They've always been, you know, we've always been sort of people that do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that. Have a talent. We you know, we want to harness the talent, but we can't at that time for whatever reason. So I think where we have to go with education is really finding out about our students, what are their talents, and not force traditional pathways. So right now, what we talk about is post-secondary success, right?
Okay.
That not every student needs to go to college.
Correct.
Right?
I agree.
That students can do a trade, right? They can go to school in the morning and maybe do a trade in the afternoon, right? That students can have, why can't a ninth grader have a source of income in high school?
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? Why can't they learn Bitcoin and they learn cryptocurrency or they can have their own business in school. So I think that's where education has to go. I think we have to get to a place that we can tell our kids it's okay not to go to college, but it's not okay not to have a plan.
Right.
The other thing that I'm seeing with education is that, similar to your path, life takes you in a lot of places and then you
Right.
go back. But the infrastructure that we have to put in place is, if traditional is not working and we have to like go into the workforce, are those places of work helping us go back to college? Are there tuition reimbursement? Are there programs?
Right.
Right? So
Right.
where's the infrastructure for that? Because we're finding out that, kids, for whatever reason, they want to work. I have 11 and 12th graders.
Yes, they want to work right now,
I'm gonna
too.
work. I'm gonna work.
And your
Okay,
job,
you know
right.
what? So I'm gonna go work at Costco's. Okay, I'm gonna make $18 an hour or whatever. I gotta help my mom or whatever. But is Costco providing you? Does Costco understanding that you're an 18-year-old high school graduate and that they don't want a lifelong 18-year-old cashier? Ain't nothing wrong with that grind, but is Costco tapping into that person's talent? Is Costco offering upward advancement in their company? Maybe, in accounting or, any other field. So I
Right.
think that infrastructure is not around, particularly for us people of color.
Now that's what we make it. That's when we make it. I think that it's just having the conversation. There's a lot of diversity conversations that's happening that we're not at the table.
We're not.
So it's how do we get to the table? We want a seat at the table, and sometimes we got to create the table.
That's
so
right.
I would offer that in every sense. Like if
That's
you have
what
a question,
Kanye said, right? He says, "I am the table."
that's it. That's it. Because come to me. Come to
Right.
me. Matter of fact, let me knock on your door. Open it. Hi.
Yeah.
How you doing? Hey, let's talk about this. So I think that's important. Let's go back a little bit, right?
Sure.
So back in the day, how school was and everything like that, there was a lot of differences between then and today. Is there anything from back then that you think would be of asset now in today's education that maybe they could bring back or should bring back?
I think I hate to be that person that like back in my day, but I think there was some good classes such as, trades that were really into the school. They were not separate from the school.
Right.
But trades, finance, things of that nature. But for the most part, I think, I think that's about it. I think those two things, like trades, kids working with their hands.
Right, like shop class,
shop
cooking,
classes,
all that.
Cooking. I think those kinds of things that, as we're becoming a more modernized society, we're doing less and less in that, You press a button, you get a burger.
Right, right.
You know
An
what
app.
I'm saying?
There's an app for that.
You have an app for that,
Right, right.
So I think, God forbid there's an apocalypse and we have to go into the woods and all of us are going to pass away because we don't know how to do anything.
No, we not. Not all of us.
So
we know there's a
things-
few people.
You know what I'm saying? Things
she
like
lives
that.
down the block.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that where you can go into the woods and just survive.
Right.
Like those kinds of things need to come back. I think we were taught that sort of awareness back then, but that's no longer around.
Right. So, so with that being said, like, what are some things that you've implemented in your role as a principal? What are a few things that you were able to bring to the table when you got to the table right there? Like, you know what? I want to see this happen.
Well, first, by proxy, by being a man of color, that's a big thing as a principal. I think when students see that I'm the principal and, I'm not that much different than they are. I grew up in New York City public school system. I
Right.
graduated. My kids go there, and I tell that story. I think that one thing is very impactful to our students. I think the other thing is I'm thinking a lot about alternative schedules, right? Why can't a student go, like I said before, take classes online, come to the school once or twice a day, and then go do a trade? So we have some students right now that come to school 3 periods, and then they go to Co-op Tech to take classes.
Yes. Shout out to Co-op Tech.
No doubt. And now we're partnering with a company called Youth Construct.
Yes, I know of
You know
Youth
Youth
Construct.
Construct?
I
Okay.
know of them. I've just recently gotten.
Yeah.
Yes.
So because it's a 6 month program, they give students a stipend and they get certified. They get OSHA certification.
I love
they
it.
get all
Yes, they
types
do.
of certifications. So we're trying to look for sort of short pathway programs so that we can build students' resumes.
So that's what I was getting ready to ask you about. Like, how important does like local CBOs, local community-based organizations play in the school board, like school system? Because I feel the same way. I feel like children should or youth should have this extra piece. That trade thing is very important. And I was just about to ask you that, and then you started mentioning that. Are there any like organizations or trades that you haven't connected with that you wish you could connect with more? Let me know. I can find it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I said, this year we're taking a huge inventory of what our students' skills are, what their desires and their needs. We're using some software with surveys and questionnaires to really figure out what they want to do in ninth grade, so that we can filter that and start aligning that to CBOs and companies, etc. So
Correct.
we're in the midst of doing that right now.
That's awesome. Well, you let me know what that list looked like,
Yeah.
and I will see what we have here. Of course, we're going to always be in contact, but I'll see what we have here, see how we can merge
Absolutely.
that, and then also see what other organizations may have that thing that you might be looking for. All right. So
I mean, what do you think? as working, because the thing is, as a principal, I have answers, but I don't have all the answers.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And I'm humble enough to know that. So I would like to hear, like, what do you think are some of those different sort of courses that kids would want to take?
Just look at what they like. If you look at your youth, right, and take a real close look at them, what are the things that they are interested in? This generation of youth do not have to work hard for money. They don't have to work hard for opportunity. So let's take all that out. They're not even looking at opportunity. They're looking like, I want to look like something, someone. They are influencers, right? So if we create the space for them to become influencers, how is that? They like phones. Why not learn how to fix a phone, right? They like tech, so we have coding, right? They like fashion, so why not teach them about how to have a fashion line? Like, create your own logo, sit them down with graphic artists. Maybe they are all of that in one place. Who does graphics well? You draw all the time. Come here. Do you like drawing? And then ask that question. Do you like it?
Right.
And then bring that in. So now you have a possible tattoo artist. Like, these are not normal things, but these are things that the youth might like barbershop, like I said, mentioned earlier, barbering, braiding hair. Braiding hair is a skill a lot of people overlook, but it can be very lucrative. Makeup, aesthetics is everything. Girls, even myself with lashes, they like to get their eyebrows plucked, waxing, all those things. But you also need to know about skin. These are trades that kind of fall waistline, because I feel like a lot of the high schools or schools itself are focused on teaching tests and not teaching the person who they are, and bringing them up to say, I've tried all of that while I was in high school. One thing that I like that you had mentioned about asking them in the ninth grade so you can put it together. For those that have attended college, you're able to create your own pathways to your graduation. Right. So I really like how you were able to implement that idea of going through the pathway. Are you interested in this? You know what? We're going to make sure in the 10th grade you get this, the 11th grade you get that, and the 12th grade you'll finish this, just in case you haven't started doing that already. This is a tip. But yes, you can have all of these different pieces. I just appreciate that, and I just wanted to say that really quick.
I think another thing that's missing that I would really like to see, right, is young people advocacy. I don't think they speak enough, and there's this misconception that today's youth doesn't know anything and they're lazy.
They are the smartest people.
They're way smarter than I was at that age.
I would always say they're smarter. They're smart. We're not progressively smarter than them, right? But we're smarter than them in a way that we're able to still manipulate the conversation. So they can be as high they want to be, but we are always going to be over them a little bit. We just have to know how to have that conversation. learn that respect level, that loyalty level with them, and then watch them flourish. Because all they ever need is a little nudge.
But how can we create that space? Because I think that's revolutionary. That's what changes the system when students say, no, I don't need this. Like, look at standardized testing. Why do we have that? But not young people go with the motions. They say, well, I have to take that test and I have to pass it.
I have to, right? Not that I care to. I want to. It's a have to thing.
So how can we create large spaces for student voice so that they can start sort of changing the system?
I would offer tap into your influencers at the school. So there's a plenty of teachers that are like super popping, right? Online, they have their own things. They have books. They have all these things. But when they come into work, they're at work.
Right.
What we don't do enough is tap into the people that are working the system, their talents. That's not happening a lot. If the teacher comes in and this teacher teaches, like, let's say English, right? But they're a DJ on the side. That might be that person's love, like passion.
Right.
They should teach that to the kids, not just teach how to read, because there's somebody that's interested in that. There's ways to do this. So I'll give an example. My son, he's 12. He's in the 6th grade again now, but a different school. Thank you, God. But the school he was going to, he had an IEP meeting. I had an IEP meeting for him. And one of the teachers that was teaching him didn't have the same complaint everybody else had. She said, well, he was sitting there and he was talking. My son has like this Tourette's that is, I don't know how to explain it. If a noise go off this way, he gonna make the noise mimic it.
Right.
It just happens. But I just found that out this year. Like, he's been doing this all the time. Anyway, so she heard him going over something over and over again, and he was saying cheese, 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 or whatever. And he's a cool kid. He does this stuff. And she said, oh, you did that from TikTok. And his face just,
Right.
because she became relatable to him. And he was like, oh my God, yeah. And he started showing her the TikTok videos and started bonding. So the thing is to find a level of relativity between the two. Credible messaging is everything. Like, you gotta come in at the, not only did I be there, but I understand everything that you're saying. I understand where you're coming from, because this was me. Like you said, this is my story. I'm here for y'all because this is my story. But it gets deeper than that. What else are you interested in? Because that interested to me. If you took at least 5 teachers, let them live their passion for one day and did an event, and they just represented that one thing that they love. Maybe they love yoga. Maybe another one love writing books. Another one like DJing, like I mentioned. Another one baking, this and a third. And put them inside of a space, auditorium or a lunchroom or whatever, and let the youth come out and see their teachers and their passion. And then say, I'm interested in learning this. Then you'll know which way to go.
Right.
Turn that room. I always call it the rainbow room, because there's all many different shades that you can have, and then the youth will be interested in it. This is not a one-stop shop anything, but I think school has become a one-stop shop for a very long time.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts.
No, that's pretty dope. I like what you're saying with that.
Thank you. All right. So I would like to know more about your thoughts on the youth today and the communities, and how all these things are happening in our communities. Like, what do you think could be a solution to help? As you can see, together we could stop gun violence. But what do you think could be one of the solutions, or maybe it's possible one of the solutions that we could use to, look at this situation from a different angle?
In terms of gun violence?
Absolutely. Gun violence, maybe morality issues, I don't know. But definitely gun violence.
Well, I know that in the last few years, we've made a big deal about social emotional learning.
Yes.
And I think rightfully so. Students need the space. They need a responsible adult. They need someone that they can speak to. I think definitely putting more social workers in the school makes sense, and more guidance counselors. I think getting students as comfortable as possible with the curriculum that represents them, like you said, right? Will open them up to have discussions with people. I think, and I'm saying this at the school level, conflict resolution courses
Correct.
also are part of a student's curriculum that can help them make better decisions out there. I know this year we're focusing, our theme is responsible decision making.
Yes.
And I think helping students understand the opportunities that are out there in life and making responsible decisions, whether they're and talking about bad decisions and good decisions, and also getting students. I know my son has a boycott black
Yeah, shout out to my son. He's been
word.
doing a lot of work. I remember
Exactly.
when I was in radio, I played one of his songs on one of our indie channels
Yeah.
many moons ago before he even came out. But that's the thing, right? We all are activists. Like, we really need to be coming together.
So my point with the my son thing, and shout outs to him. I never met him, but he's a good dude from what I see. Is that where are the kids when you're doing this activism, right? Like where are they, right? So I don't see enough students doing that, and I think that's where it's at. You got to get them to care and understand why, we need to be out there in the streets. You have to get them to march, and I think that's the big piece that's missing, that empathy piece, that understand. We just lost PNB Rock. What's his,
Yeah, my son. So my
You know,
son, my son comes in my room today and tells me, "Mommy, PMB Rock got killed. He died, and he was just kind of like lonely, right?" And I go to my son and I'm like, "Really, what happened?" And he's like, "Oh, nothing. He was doing good too. He just make his music. He ain't worried about nothing. Da da da."
Right.
And they just shot him and they killed him, and then he walks off from me. And I was like, "I'm sorry for your loss." And my son goes, "Thank you." Like, he really, felt that. And I was like, wow. But every time my son is one of those. So every time something happens, he always updates me, like, if I'm interested, but I'll be like, really? Because that's what he need, right? But this is starting to become like our whole generation's wiped out. I feel, honestly, this is me and my thoughts, we got to have some people to sit here and change our Pampers at some point. Like, this generation is the generation that's going to take care of us, the brain surgery, the going to the store, being our caretakers, taking care of our grandchildren, our great-grands, the next generation. This can't be what we leave here.
Right.
This can't be what we leave here. In another 60 years, we're not going to be here. This can't be what we leave here for that.
But a phenomenon that I'm seeing is that the generations are getting blended.
Yeah.
Let me explain what that means. Back, a few years ago, we used to say, "Oh, these kids are always on their phone. They're always on their phone and they're addicted to their phones." But I see adults just as addicted to their phones.
That part.
With the same behavior.
Right.
We talk about, bullying, and kids are always bullying each other. But if you're on the internet, adults are bullying each other. Everything is a joke. There's no empathy. So there is a blended generation of stuff that's happening right now, and it's like we're not being the OGs. We're not finding enough OGs. We're being little G's with them.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I'm appalled that some OGs are like younger than me. I'm like, how you an OG? You're 16.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that
It's us too.
we have to do that work too, because we're becoming part of that web of stuff that the young generation is going through. We're doing the same things as well. So we need young people to be marching. We need them to be advocating. We need them to feel empathy for black and brown death, all those things. And don't even get me started on media and how we're portrayed on the media. But we need to be smart and have courses taught of media and how we're being portrayed. Kids need to know that.
Right. Right.
So I think there isn't a one-shot deal to stopping violence. I think is a culmination of a lot of things.
Are you open to organizations bringing in workshops to your school, possibly to do stuff like that? Because I'm connected with a lot of different things, and if that's the case, maybe I can bring to you a list of different workshops, what they do, and maybe we can set a day to do a big workshop and just be like, hey, did you know this, and give information, because those things are things that can actually be curated and put together. So like, just give me a list of stuff that you would like, and I can find some facilitators. That's what we do here, is facilitate.
Absolutely.
So I do appreciate you. I appreciate your time here on the Indie Rollout, and this was really interesting. Is there anything that you want the audience to know for sure? Like, any thoughts, any last thoughts, anything?
I think when it comes to the youth, we have to continue to push them, continue to help them be optimistic,
Yes.
continue to seek alternative pathways of them being successful, and just continue to love them. That's the number
Love
one. Show
first,
them
yes.
love, no
Yes.
matter what. Show them love.
Yes.
So that's my philosophy.
Thank you very much, Principal Viz, for being a part of the Indie Rollout. Shout out to everybody that tuned in. I appreciate y'all. Shout out to the producers. Shout out to everybody for making this happen. And it's your girl, Rema the Great. And this is Indie Rollout, and we out. Deuces.